Hello, my dear students. Welcome you all to Sri Jayendra Rank Zone classes. I am your mentor and your friend for the subject biology, and I will be taking care of the zoology part, that is the animal science. My dear students, today we are going to start with a very important topic in evolution chapter. This is lecture number 7, and we are going to start with Darwinism. Okay. Among all the biologists, among all the researchers of greatest time, Darwin, his name is always on the top. Darwinism was actually the phenomenon collector or the phenomenal contribution of this great scientist, Charles Darwin. It is always being remembered as a remarkable footprint in the subject of biology. So today we are going to start with the Darwinism. Okay. The very first point is Charles Darwin was born in 12th Feb 1809 in England. Darwin traveled by HMS Beagle. The HMS Beagle was the ship in which Darwin, along with Alfred Russel Wallace, they both traveled and they explored almost every place, whole of the world. Alfred Russel Wallace, along with Charles Darwin, they explored different islands with different concepts of evolution. The ship left on December 1831, and returned on October 1836. So almost around 5 years of voyage they actually concluded. He traveled South America, South Africa, Australia, and most important, Galapagos Islands. Darwin was influenced by two books, Principles of Population by Malthus and Principles of Geology by Charles Lyell. Darwin inspiration from these two books, Principles of Population by Malthus and Principles of Geology by Charles Lyell. So what is Darwinism? What are the different concepts in regard of evolution given by Darwin? Let us see. Alfred Russel Wallace. He traveled Southeastern Asia and South America. Mean only these two continents were covered by Alfred Russel Wallace, but the later on Darwin alone he traveled and explored the world, especially the Galapagos Island. The idea of natural selection struck in his mind when the first person to come up with the idea of natural selection. Natural selection. Understood? Wallace, he wrote an essay and sent it to Darwin on the tendency of varieties to indefinitely from original type. Mean on the tendency of varieties to indefined, when it is indefined from the original type. When original type it evolves infinite times, undefined, okay? And this basically depends upon the tendencies of the varieties, means it is the inherent potential of the varieties, okay, or the adaptability of the varieties which actually giving them a chance to evolve. There was striking similarity between the view of Darwin and Wallace. Wallace presented a chart to explain main points of theory of Darwin. Darwinism or theory of natural selection was proposed by both Charles Darwin and A.R. Wallace. So both Charles Darwin and A.R. Wallace, they proposed theory of natural selection or the concept of Darwinism. This theory was later on explained by Darwin in his book On the Origin of Species by the Means of Natural Selection in 1859. So 1859, the book was published on the origin of species by the means of natural selection. But the idea was first came into the mind of A.R. Wallace, and the Darwinism or the theory of natural selection was proposed by both Charles Darwin and A.R. Wallace. Now coming to next slide, what are the different facts and what are the consequences, means conclusions of the natural selection? So according to the natural selection which was proposed by Charles Darwin, facts. First point, enormous rate of reproduction means overpopulation or overreproduction among animals. So animals, they are coming up with enormous rate of reproduction, constant number of animals of a species. Okay, mean the number of individuals in a species, they always remain constant, although they are reproducing enormously, but many of them, they are actually not getting adapted or acclimatized to that environment, to that changing environment, and that is why the consequence is, the conclusion is struggle of for existence. Mean their reproduction rate is very high, they are reproducing, but the fact is how many of them are surviving. So that survival rate is basically dependent on the struggle for existence. The struggle for existence basically depends upon the survival of the fittest or natural selection. The struggle for existence depends upon the survival of the fittest or natural selection. These adaptabilities, these changes in the member of a particular species by means of natural selection are heritable variations. Okay, so according to natural selection, the Lamarckism says that acquired characters, they are inherited, but according to Darwin, only the characters which are basically due to the natural selection or the struggle for existence, they are only heritable. Survival of the fittest, continuous natural selection leading to evolution of new species, mean speciation. So because of natural selection is continuous, it will lead to the evolution of new species, that is speciation. Okay. So survival of the fittest and continuous environmental changes, they will lead to speciation, means formation of new species. Struggle for existence and heritable variations, they will lead to survival of fittest or natural selection. Enormous rate of reproduction among animals, but constant number of animals in a species, the consequence is struggle for existence. So struggle for existence, survival of fittest or natural selection, and speciation, they are the consequences of the parameters, and those parameters are for struggle for existence, overreproduction, overpopulation, but the constant number of species, then for the survival of fittest or natural selection, heritable variations and struggle for existence, and for speciation, survival of the fittest and continuous environmental changes. So these were the different facts and the conclusions of those facts which were proposed by Charles Darwin and A.R. Wallace. Okay, but in the book on the mark of origin of species by the means of natural selection, which was published and rewritten by the Charles Darwin, was published in 1859, was actually having all these facts and consequences. Now coming to next slide, natural selection. What is natural selection? The main features of theory of natural selection are as follows. First is overproduction, high rate of reproduction. The members of the species, they undergo high rate of reproduction, means they are reproducing and they are basically making other members of the same progeny. Okay, all organisms have capability to produce enormous number of offsprings. Organisms multiply in geometric ratio. Plants produce thousands of seeds. Insects lay hundreds of eggs. So means there is a geometric, or we can say exponential, increase in the population size. Population size. There is always a geometrical or a arithmetic or exponential increase in the population size, means number of individuals. One pair of elephant gave rise to about 6 offsprings, and if all survived in 750 years, a single pair would produce about 19 million elephants. So according to the arithmetic ratios, the mathematical concepts, one pair of elephant gives 6 offsprings, and if all the 6 survive in and around 750 years, then in 750 years, around a single pair would produce 19 million elephants. Thus, organisms produce more offspring and other produce fewer offspring. This is called differential reproduction. Mean there are some members of other species or different species which are producing high number of offspring because of the reproductive ratio or the rate, and the members of different species, they are producing very less number of progenies or the offsprings. Struggle for existence. So this is the topic and this is the point which was proposed by Charles Darwin in his book Natural Selection. Now coming to the second point, struggle for existence. Every individual competes with other. As the number of individuals will increase, as the number of individuals will increase, there will be a increase in the demand of resources. Demand of resources. Resources like space, shelter, food. So every individual compete with the other of same or other species for basic necessities like space, shelter, and food. It is called struggle for existence. If they want to survive, they have to struggle for these resources. And it continues for the whole lifespan. And it continues for the whole lifespan from zygote stage to its natural death. Zygote, it struggles for coming out in the form of developed and healthy baby. Then, till natural death, they are basically surviving for these three factors: space, shelter, and food. Okay. So this is known as what? Struggle for existence. Now, next is variations and heredity. The third point is variation and heredity. Second point, struggle for existence. And first point, overproduction. Except identical twins or no two individuals are similar. Very importantly mentioned, except identical twins, no two individuals are similar and their requirements are also not same. Means the members of species, if they are having, if they are basically from the same parent, and if they are identical twins, then only they are genetically similar. Okay. So even though the same parents are giving offsprings, the members of the offspring, they are not genetically identical. It means there are differences among the individuals of the same species as well. These differences are called variations. Due to variations, some individuals would be better adjusted if the variation lead to that individual or the group of individuals, that is population, to better adjust, acclimatize the environment. Okay, then they will survive. Their survival chances will increase. According to Darwin, the variations are continuous. Okay, and those which are helpful in the adaptation of the organism towards its surrounding would be passed on to the next generation, while the others will disappear. Very importantly mention that the variations which are coming in a particular generation, they are continuous, and these variations will lead to what? The adaptability, increase in the adaptability range. If they are basically adapting to that environment with the help of that variation or inherited character, then they will survive, or they will pass on that variation to the next generation. Unless the other variation will not be passed, they will disappear. Now coming to next, survival of the fittest or natural selection. This is the fourth point. The original idea of survival of the fittest was proposed by Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer, he proposed the idea of survival of fittest. Okay. According to Darwin, most suitable and fit individuals are successful in struggle for existence. According to Darwin, the individuals which are fit both physically, mentally, they can easily struggle for their existence, and they won the battle for the struggle of existence. Darwin, he proposed the individuals with most favorable adaptation are able to lead when they will be the part of the climax community. Okay, the individuals with most favorable adaptations, they will be the part of climax community, and they will lead the society, they will lead the group to most successful life and are able to win over their mating partners. So it is very important to mate or to win the right partner. They have to struggle. They have to beat the competitors, and that is why it is given favorable adaptations. Okay. Now coming to next, Darwin called it sexual selection because the selection also helping the individuals to find out their right mating partners so that they can, you know, uh, withstand the dominancy of their species. That is why it is mentioned. Darwin called it as sexual selection. In the struggle for existence, only those members survive which possesses useful variations. Okay, it's very important. In the struggle for existence, only those members survive which possesses useful variations, means nature selects fit individuals. Okay, so it is very important to know that nature is going to select only the fit individuals. Okay, understood? This was called natural selection. Okay, so Darwin first he concluded the need for sexual selection, and in the struggle for existence only those members survive which possesses useful variations, means nature selects fit individuals. Understood? This was called natural selection. This was called natural selection. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and to get selected by nature. Most important. Fitness is considered as the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. I mean, nature, if the nature is going to select, then it will select only the most fit individuals. Understood? Origin of new species. Okay. Darwin explained that variations appearing due to environmental changes, he explained that the variations appearing due to environmental changes are transmitted to the next generation, mean the inheritable. Darwin explained that variations appearing due to the environmental changes are transmitted to the next generation, and that is why these are known as what? Inheritable problem. Sorry, inheritable variations. So these inheritable variations, they are basically the environmental changes which are transmitting from one generation to the next generation. This was proposed by Darwin in the origin of new species, means speciation. Okay. Darwin explained the variations. So offspring becomes different from the ancestors, and that is why because of these variations, the ancestors and their evolutionary evolved offsprings, they are different. Okay, they are different. In next generation, process of natural selection repeats. So after many generations, a new species form. Mean every time they are coming up with these variations, and that is why it is going to come again and again, again and again, and this will lead to ultimately the formation of new species. So I'll revise it for you. The first point was overproduction. The second point was struggle for existence. The third point was variations in heredity. The fourth point, survival of the fittest or natural selection. And the fifth point was the origin of new species, that is speciation. Okay. Now, my dear students, we are going to talk about the further in the next slide. Criticism of Darwinism. Why the theory proposed by Darwin, that is origin of species by natural selection, it is basically opposed by different scientists. Darwin does not explain the development of vestigial organs in the course of evolution. If the organism is coming up with the changes, then what about the vestigial organs? How these organs are becoming functionless? So that is why Darwin was not having the exact answer for these vestigial organs. No satisfactory explanation for the cause, origin, and inheritance of variation. He was not having any satisfactory explanation for the cause, origin, and inheritance of variation, because of those time the scientists, the researchers, they don't actually was having the enough projection, enough idea that what exactly the Darwin was proposing at that time is now the fate of life. Now everyone believes that whatever was actually written by Darwin in his book is, I mean, they are the golden words. Darwin is unable to explain why in a population only a few individuals develop useful variation and others have harmful variation. And that is why it is known as what? Survival of the fittest. The variation, it can be useful for a particular group, but it can be harmful for the other group. So why it is happening? So that why actually was not answered or was actually not understood by the people of those times. Criticism of Darwinism was based on sexual selection. Why only female selects the male for mating? Why not vice versa? That is the question. That why only female selects the most adapted male, favored male for mating? Why not vice versa? Actually, the things are vice versa. Darwin was unable to differentiate between somatic and germinal variations. Okay, so Darwin was unable to differentiate between somatic and germinal variations because, according to him, or he was not known up to that time about the DNA or DNA mutations. Okay, mean the micro variations. This theory was unable to explain over specialization of some organs like tusk of elephants and antlers of deer. The theory was unable to explain over specialization, the tusk of elements, mean organs like tusk of elements and antlers of deer. So the over specialization of these organs, why it is so? Why tusk of elephant is a specialized skill and which is given to only elephant? So that depends upon the adaptability. That depends upon the need. Okay. This theory only explains the survival of the fittest, but unable to explain the arrival of the fittest. Mean according to this theory, only the fit individual they will survive. But how come in the next generation the fit individuals will arrive? So that is why I was unable to explain the arrival of the fittest. The main drawbacks of Darwinism was lack of the knowledge of heredity. That is what I was explaining means about DNA and its changes. Mean microbiological changes were not considered by DNA. He was not having the knowledge that how DNA could favor or unfavor a particular species by attributing the favored characters or the unfavored characters. So this is what about Darwinism is. We will be further discussing many more things about Darwin and the other evidences of evolution as well in the next coming video. Till then, please take care Everyone, stay safe, stay at home. Bye bye.